They were the family you wave to without thinking. A chalk hopscotch on the sidewalk. A faded soccer net leaning toward the fence. On summer nights, their mother, Ruth Vale, read in the swing while the kids raced lightning bugs. She worked split shifts at the clinic, collected library receipts in a bowl by the door, and taped paper stars to the ceiling so the little ones wouldn't be afraid of the dark. Colin Mercer didn't live on Meadow Lane anymore. He lived 10 minutes away in a rented condo with grayer walls and louder silence. He said the marriage had failed because of money. Ruth said it failed because you can't build trust on a lie. The court called it high conflict. The custody hearing was scheduled for Monday. The fire started on Sunday. Colin told police he woke at 4 to the smell of smoke, that he drove like a man possessed, that he kicked the door and burned his arms trying to save his babies. He said smoke does not care about love. He said he heard them, but the flames were a wall. He wept into a television camera at dawn. He thanked the firefighters. He thanked the neighbors who left casseroles on his step. He forgot to mention the ladder behind the house. He forgot to mention the empty red fuel can found in the drainage ditch 2 blocks away. He forgot that cameras don't sleep. On Baker's Market security footage at 3:07 a.m., a man in a dark hoodie buys a can and 2 gallons of petrol. The cashier remembers him because he jokes about gas being cheaper than therapy. The timestamp on his receipt reads 3 hours 8 minutes and 12 seconds. The clerk bags the can in a black trash sack because the man says he doesn't want to spill it in his trunk. At 3:29 a.m., a neighbor's doorbell camera catches a shadow passing the Vale's mailbox. A cough, a gloved hand, then the chime of metal on slot 1, 2, 3, and a low slosh like rain in a gutter. A spark, a breath. The doorbell camera dies in the light. The fire takes the hallway first, then the stairwell. It sucks the oxygen out of rooms painted yellow and blue. The paper stars curl back from the heat and drop like snow. When investigators arrive, they find a pattern they know too well. Accelerant pooling under the letter slot. Flow marks under the threshold. The chart tells a simple story. The flames rose from the inside of the door and climbed. There are no burn patterns near the outlets, no blown breakers to hint at wiring. This is not an accident. This is a signature. Ruth is in the kitchen, collapsed near the sink. The youngest are in their beds, still tucked. The older 2 are together on the stairs, their hands reaching for the banister they practiced sliding down on better mornings. The coroner will list the cause as smoke inhalation. Colin weeps again for cameras. He calls them my kids, in the past tense, and talks about the soccer net as if each thread were a vein. He thanks the city, the police, the Lord. He asks for privacy and then lingers in the parking lot as microphones multiply. A detective named Soria watches him talk and writes down 3 things. 1. His tears stop when the red light on the news camera clicks off. 2. The burns on his forearms are patterned like drips, not bands, consistent with leaning over a low flame while pouring, not rushing through smoke. 3. His alibi is a clock with missing numbers. Colin says he was home, asleep by midnight, up at 4, in the car by 4:08. But his phone, when they bag it and get the warrant, says otherwise. His GPS pings at 3:32 a.m. within 50 yards of Meadow Lane. He turned it off at 3:35. He turned it back on at 4:12. He did not, as claimed, wake to smoke on his own street. He woke to it on hers. In the interview room, Detective Soria lets silence do its work. She asks about the custody hearing. She asks about arrears and the email from his lawyer calling Monday, do or die. She asks about the Baker's Market receipt they found in the console, the black trash sack on his passenger floor, the sweet chemical ghost of petrol on his hoodie. She asks about the ladder. Colin says he never owned a ladder. The ladder has his initials burned into the side. That night, officers sit Colin in the back of a cruiser to take him to a hotel for his safety. They leave him alone for 8 minutes with the recorder running, because the recorder always runs. He calls someone named Mason. He keeps his voice low and his panic lower. Stick to it, he whispers. You always stick to the story. The story keeps changing. He tells one friend he woke to an alarm at his condo. He tells another he woke to a feeling. He tells a third that angels shake fathers awake when their children are in danger. The cashier at Baker's remembers a different pantheon, humor, cheap gas, and a black bag. Riverbend changes too. Overnight, the fences turn into shrines. Soccer balls and stuffed bears and notes in shaky pencil handwriting. "We miss you, Noah." At the vigil, Ruth's sister reads the names. Candles gutter. Wind carries the smoke away from Meadow Lane toward the river. Detective Soria brings in a fire dynamics expert who models the burn in slow motion on a laptop. The expert pauses at the moment the stairwell flashes over, a bloom of heat and gas moving like a tide. If anyone had stood there pouring, the pattern on their arms would look exactly like Colin's. They arrest him in the gray condo on a Tuesday. He asks to put on a suit jacket for court optics. He chooses navy. He chooses a tie that the public defender will later advise him to remove. The trial is clinical. The jury hears the phone pings, watches the doorbell footage, examines the ladder, the can, the hoodie. They hear the recording from the cruiser, Colin's voice like a hiss at the bottom of a well. "Stick to it." They hear the custody emails. "If she wins, I lose everything." They hear the cashier's joke repeated under oath. No one laughs. Colin takes the stand and becomes a poet of grief. He tells them smoke is a thief. He tells them memory buckles under pressure. He tells them he was a good father. The prosecutor shows the receipt, shows the petrol traces on his sleeves, shows the ladder again. The verdict comes back fast. Guilty on 6 counts of murder and 1 of arson. The judge's gavel is a quiet sound, but in Riverbend it not something you can't see. People exhale. The soccer net is mended with new twine. A scholarship fund carries Lena's name. Justice is simple in the way sunlight is simple. It falls where it can. It warms what it touches. It cannot raise the dead. In the courthouse lobby, Detective Soria stands with Ruth. They don't speak. There's nothing language can move that the sentence hasn't already moved. But as the crowd thins, a reporter hurries up, eyes bright with fresh ink. "Detective," she says, lowering her voice, "do you have a second?" Soria nods. "We pulled additional footage from Baker's parking lot," the reporter says. "Something." The man in the hoodie wasn't alone. "Look." On the phone screen, 3:06 a.m. headlights sweep the lot. A second figure gets out of the passenger side, tall, broad-shouldered, walks behind the pickup, pops the tailgate, and hands the driver the black trash sack. He keeps his face turned away from the camera. He wears a ball cap with AM stitched on the front. The footage stutters. The seconds jump. The tailgate slams. The reporter swipes to a still photo, a screenshot from the courthouse steps just hours ago. A man in a ball cap, M stitched on the front, standing in the back of the crowd beneath a tree, watching the verdict, hands in pockets. Soria feels the hairs on her arms rise. She thinks of the whisper in the cruiser. "Stick to it." She thinks of the missing gas can and the cough at the letter slot and the way the flames moved like 2 hands, not one. Colin Mercer will die in prison. In Riverbend, some part of the balance has returned. But justice, real justice, does not sleep. Soria looks up from the screen and into the late afternoon light pooling across the courthouse floor. "Send me the file," she says, "and clear your evening." Because behind closed doors, stories multiply. And somewhere between a black trash bag and a mailbox slot, another match was struck. Riverbend thought it was over. The trial ended, the verdict was in, and Colin Mercer, the suburban dad who turned custody into fire, was locked away for life. People whispered that maybe now Meadow Lane could breathe again. But justice has a strange way of leaving shadows. Detective Soria had already closed her notebook when the reporter handed her the phone that day. A ball cap, stitched with a single M, glowed on the screen. A second man at the gas station. A second man in the shadows of Riverbend's grief. Colin's voice echoed in her mind, "Stick to it." Stick to what? A lie Colin hadn't told alone. The footage showed it clearly, a tall figure stepping out of the passenger side, passing the black trash sack, then ducking behind the pickup like he knew the camera was there. Not just a bystander, an accomplice. The initials stitched on the cap, weren't random. They tied to Colin's late-night call from the back of the cruiser. "Stick to it, Mason." Mason Hale, Colin's oldest friend. A drinking buddy turned handyman for hire. known for odd jobs, unpaid bills, and favors that came with strings attached. Mason's name had surfaced once in the investigation when a neighbor remembered a loud argument in the Vale driveway weeks before the fire. But Mason had slipped through the cracks. Now, the cracks were widening. For Ruth Vale, the trial hadn't ended anything. She still woke up gasping from dreams of smoke, still set 6 plates at the table before catching herself. At the vigil, she told neighbors she forgave Colin because forgiveness was easier than burning twice. But behind her closed door, her grief curdled into suspicion. She knew Colin wasn't clever enough to plan it alone. Someone else had struck that match. Someone else had walked away. When Detective Soria knocked with the photo still in her hand, Ruth's face drained. "That cap," she whispered. "I've seen it before. In my driveway. 2 weeks before the fire." Mason Hale wasn't hard to find. Riverbend is small, and his truck, an old silver Ford with pipes jutting out the bed, was louder than his lies. He rented a room above a pawn shop, cash only, no questions. Soria went in with a warrant. Inside, the smell of old oil and cigarette ash. On the floor, a half-burned pair of gloves. On the counter, a box of matches from Baker's Market. And tacked above his bed, a newspaper clipping about the Vale fire, folded, reread, softened at the edges. But Mason wasn't there. He hadn't been for days. The pawn shop owner said Mason had driven off after the verdict, mumbling about finishing business. He left behind his rent, his tools, and one phrase the owner couldn't shake. They didn't find everything. Colin Mercer was quieter now, locked in a concrete cell with nothing but echoes. But one call came through on a recorded prison line, just hours after Mason vanished. "Brother," Colin rasped, "they're watching me. They found the tape. Don't come here. Don't visit. Just make sure she knows." The guard wrote it down, flagged it, and slid it to Soria. Who was she? Ruth? Someone else? And what was the tape? Riverbend braced itself. The flowers left on Meadow Lane browned in the August sun, but whispers grew sharper. If Mason had helped start the fire, what else had he helped cover? Was there evidence still out there? Or worse, another target? Detective Soria requested Mason's records, traffic stops, job sites, unpaid fines. Buried in a DMV log was a note. Mason had been pulled over one town over the week after the fire. In the back of his truck, an old ladder with initials carved into the wood. CM Colin Mercer's ladder, proof that Mason wasn't just helping. He was there. 2 weeks later, just after midnight, Ruth Vale's phone buzzed with an unknown number. She answered, half asleep. A man's voice rasped through static. Too calm. You think it's over? It's not over. He burned the house, but I kept what mattered. 6 isn't the number you think it is. The line went dead. Ruth froze, staring at the dark house around her, the same house she refused to move from, no matter how many neighbors begged her to leave. 6 wasn't the number you think it is. Detective Soria replayed the voicemail 3 times the next morning. Mason's voice, without doubt. But what did he mean? What did he keep? And what if the Vale tragedy wasn't the whole story? Riverbend thought the fire had ended with Colin Mercer's guilty verdict. But now, with Mason Hale in the wind, a missing tape, and a chilling message that hinted at secrets buried deeper than ash, what is the secret inside the missing tape? Comment below and follow. Part 2 may prove the dead aren't the only ones left in the dark.